We've probably all have heard of TED Talks. Well, these are going to be H2O talks. And our first one is on hydrophilanthropy, and I'm pleased to introduce to you Michael Campana.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you. For those of you who are from Tennessee, I'm not going to insult you by saying hi, y'all. But I just did. Actually, my mother was born just a couple miles east of here, I-40, except in the Tar Heel state. So I've got, yeah, great. I got some roots here. Okay. You've got the title there. The clock's already ticking. I've got 15 minutes to get my message across to you. Okay. What I'm going to do is talk, first of all, define hydrophilanthropy, talk about some projects, some of the things I do, some of the things that some of you are doing, and then kind of wrap it up with actually one slide on what I've learned. And if I go through this quickly, don't worry, it's going to be on my blog in a couple hours, and if Jim Butler's in the audience, you have no worries, okay? Everything's going to be cool. Okay, so take note of that quote at the bottom there. That's very important. The road to help is paved with good intentions. We all have good intentions when we start out doing something. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And one of the first things I do when I come to a new city, I find out where their water comes from. Everybody, you know where the Nashville drinking water comes from, right? Cumberland River, yeah, right. But rest assured that probably on average 30 to 40% of this water is groundwater, okay, base flow. Oh, that's good. Love that chlorine. Okay. It's going to work now. Now, this woman here doesn't have the luxury that I have of just going out to a faucet here and taking water. She's got to walk several miles a day, 40, 45 pounds of water on her head. We all know how heavy water is. You guys know better than I do. But she's smiling. So why is she smiling? Because she's got a job, okay? She's the water carrier for her village. And now, don't worry, this is as far as it goes. Okay, scares some people. Ray Newmyer gave me this shirt a couple years ago. I'm sure most of you know Ray. The front simply says, "Got water." On the back, I've got it down there so I don't have to turn around. You have difficulty reading it. But it simply says that we're looking for a water carrier. Must be able to balance 45 pounds on your head while trekking rocky dirt roads for miles. Hours, up to 8 hours a day. Wages, whether it's euros, dollars, lempira, whatever, it's zero. And only women and children need apply, and actually I modify that, only women and girls need apply, because most of you know that in the developing world, the burden of finding water falls to women and girls. Okay, we're going to talk about that. So what is hydrophilanthropy? I did not coin this term. So if people give me a bad time about it, I say, hey, Dave Kramer first used it a number of years ago. It wasn't really defined at the time, and so I kind of came up with a definition based on what Dave was thinking about. And you can read it right here, okay? And it's simply, an altruistic approach to providing water for people who are less fortunate than we are. Some people don't like the term because they think it implies kind of an asymmetric relationship where I'm the great white messiah, if you will, coming in, and I'm going to bring water to these poor people who can't do it for themselves. I don't look at it that way, okay? I look at it, at least the stuff I do, is helping people help themselves get their own water, okay? So I've got this real long definition here. Don't bother reading it, but I've been thinking that hydrophilanthropy is really much broader than taking water to people or helping people in developing countries. It's a whole suite of activities, and I'm sure most of you have indulged in these activities and probably are doing it right now. How many of you are serving on some kind of volunteer commission at the county or the state or your municipality puts together because you're an expert in water? I'm sure you're all doing that now, okay? That's hydrophilanthropy in my view, okay? You can be doing applied or basic research. We've seen Chung Mao and Scott Tyler, John Selker and others getting awards for their work. A lot of that work is being used in developing countries. That's hydrophilanthropy, okay? It can be relief or development work, and what I mean by relief work is what's going on now in Philippines, what was going on in Haiti a number of years ago. It's when you go into an area that's just been ravaged by some kind of disaster, could be war, could be a natural disaster, and you try to bring them back up to speed ASAP. Development work is what I do, where I go into an area and you essentially train people to do something on their own so they don't have to keep asking you to come back over and over again. And then, of course, there's also education and outreach. So this is my best definition of hydrophilanthropy right here. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. And I can't take credit for this. Those of you who are old like me remember Justice Potter Stewart, 30 or so years ago, when the Supreme Court was going around about what was hardcore pornography. Okay, and someone asked Justice Stewart, he said, well, I don't know, but I know it when I see it. Same thing with hydrophilanthropy. I'm not equating the two. Okay, if there are any reporters in the audience, don't get started, okay? Anyway, this map is kind of a funny map. This is 2001, so it's a little bit old, okay? Hasn't probably changed too much, but it simply shows the countries of the world. And their sizes, you can see they're very strange. The United States you can barely see on top of Mexico, but the size is proportional to the number of people who don't have access to safe drinking water. Okay, that's really all you need to know about that. The dark figures, or the darker colors, are countries where there are higher percentages of people who don't have access to safe drinking water. Now, there's some confusion sometimes about improved water versus safe water. I like to use safe water because safe water means I can drink it. Improved water means maybe someone stuck a pipe in a spring or something like that, and yet it's still pouring out with Giardia and all kinds of stuff. So there's a little bit of concern about that. Now, the United Nations, after maps like that came out in 2005, the General Assembly said, hey, we need to do something about that. So they established 8 called Millennium Development Goals. There are a number of targets within each goal. And in goal number 7, which is environmental sustainability, target 7C, now you got to remember that, it's important. Remember, this is the UN, so if you don't say 7C, they're not know what you're talking about. That's water and sanitation. So what they wanted to do was, within 10 years, reduce the number of people who didn't have access to safe water or sanitation by 50%. Okay, the water target is supposedly has been met. I don't believe that. That's why I have the question marks there, but that's a whole nother talk. The sanitation target, which is very important, and it goes hand in hand with clean water. Without sanitation, you don't have clean water. That's probably going to be undercut by about 700 million people. Now, meeting these, the technology required to meet these things is not rocket science. Okay, yes, there are some issues. People are working on removing things like fluoride and arsenic from water, and of course pathogenic organisms, and inventing new ways of doing things, but it isn't rocket science. It takes political will and money. Political will, in many cases, is lacking. I had a student ask me a couple of weeks ago, she goes, well, why doesn't this country find it in their best interest to provide their citizens with safe water and sanitation? I couldn't answer the question, okay? I just said, my first inclination, and I mentioned it to her, I said, because the people who run the country are scumbags, okay? Now, that's a horrible thing to say, but in this particular country it was true, but that's not the only reason, okay? I can use worse words. So anyway, we'll see how they do. Now, what's hydrophilanthropy? Steve Schneider's better be in the audience here, because I told him I'm going to call him out. Of course, I can't see. For all I know, there's no one sitting in front of me. These are the famous water supply well guidelines for use in developing countries that Steve has come up with, okay? And he's very humble, and he won't take all the credit, okay? Other people did help, but this was Steve's idea, and he went through with it. Now, the one on your right, you may say, well, I guess Steve forgot how to spell. But I know, since he went to Oregon State University, he's an excellent speller as well as an excellent engineer. That was just translated into Swahili. Okay? He distributed a bunch of these at Kenya, went over like hot potato. It's now being translated, I believe, into Mandarin, and French and Spanish are on tap. This thing, which I call S-cubed hydrophilanthropy, Steve Schneider style, is really kind of amazing. God bless him. Here are just some stock pictures. This is some work I was doing. Notice I'm not doing the pipe cutting and threading. They left the 3-inch ID pipe for me to thread, and that was not a whole lot of fun, okay? That's me in the front there with that funny white hat on, and that looks like, I won't tell you what that is. We're trying to build a foundation for a water tank, Okay, beautiful limestone there in Honduras. Okay, now let me tell you some of the mistakes I made. The biggest mistake I made, and I still make, is not doing sustainable work. Okay, if you go into a country or any place or in a community in your area or something, and you give people a new well or a new pump, but you don't give them the means to be able to maintain that pump, whether it's teaching them how to collect operation and maintenance fees or train them. I deal with simple hand pumps and things like that. You can train people how to work on those. Then that's not sustainable, and you're doing those people more harm than good, okay? And unfortunately, there are a lot of people doing that kind of work these days where they go in there, it's a one-off project, they're at the Houston airport with their red, yellow, and green T-shirts, and they go down there for a couple weeks, 2 weeks, they do something, they come back, and that's it, okay? That's not good. So that last one down there, sustainability, monitoring, and evaluation is very important. Do sustainable work, and then make sure you monitor and evaluate it. Is it still working? Do I need to tweak things? Do they need to tweak things? And you also have to realize, very important, that we in the Western world don't see, the rest of the world doesn't always see things the way we do. So what works in the US and Canada and maybe Western Europe and some other places doesn't necessarily work in the developing world. And we need to be mindful of that and not try to force our way of doing things on people who don't want to. Okay, what can you do? Okay, and the kind of hydrophilanthropy I'm talking about is more kind of the developing countries type thing, the traditional, what I would call traditional hydrophilanthropy. These are some organizations that use volunteers. You probably haven't heard with Hydrogeologists Without Borders. That is a Canadian organization. In fact, Kathy Ryan, who's been elected to the Scientists and Engineers Divisional Board, Kathy Ryan is one of the movers and shakers in that group. I'm on the board of directors. Some of you know John Cherry, one of the world's foremost hydrogeologists, along with Chun Mao and also Lenny. He's chairman of the board. Okay. Life Water and Living Water, they're two different organizations. They used to have some relationship. Those are Christian organizations. Okay, so if you're a Christian, those are two organizations you might want to look at. I got my start with Life Water, and I used to be a trainer for Living Water on hand pumps and things like that. And of course, Engineers Without Borders. You may say, well, I'm not an engineer, and I don't know any EWB people. EWB has professional chapters, student chapters at many universities, and a lot of the work that they're doing is not purely engineering. And they're also doing groundwater work, and sometimes they don't have groundwater people around, and they're looking for them, okay? There's also Engineers Without Action. If you're a Rotarian, a lot of individual Rotary clubs are focused on foreign issues, and Rotary International is very strong in the water and sanitation field, so you can get something going through Rotary. Water for People, a wonderful group headed by Ned Breslin, who is a very charismatic and thoughtful speaker when it comes to things like hydrophilanthropy. Looks like you lost the, oh, there we go. I was wondering, I looked, I said, who's that guy? It's me. Okay. Anyway, no one said anything to me. Geez, that's the way it is when you get old. Okay. So Water for People has something called the World Water Corps, and it's a volunteer organization. And what the World Water Corps people do is they check up on Water for People projects in various countries. Okay? So they do monitoring, evaluation, they assess sustainability, et cetera. There are also church groups. I'm sure some of you are involved. Some of your churches may be involved in this. Okay. The last one is a group I used to belong to, Volunteers and Technical Assistants, VITA. They apparently are still around. But in the number of years that I was a volunteer, they only asked me to do things twice, and so I don't really belong to it much anymore. It seemed to me that their focus was they were interested in business and entrepreneurship, which is important, but I didn't have any skills in that area, as many of you well know. And then, of course, we have our Developing Nations Interest Group Forum. Okay? These are some readings that might be of interest. That top one there, Water Resources Impact. These are a series of short articles. And again, this will be on my blog, which I'll give you the URL for, and a couple other things. And I'm sure you've seen Water Well Journal, the November issue. I've got an editorial in there, and there are a number of good articles, and even in the current National Driller, there's some great things. So I've got 28 seconds left, and my God, I want to leave this with you. I know this is a true quote because I was one of the people sitting around the table BSing about some of the work that we'd done. And finally, there was kind of a lull in the conversation, and a doctor, I didn't know she was a doctor, she spoke up, and this is what she said, and it blew us all away. I really envy you guys. You have the power to keep people from getting sick. By the time I'm called, it's really too late. And I like to close with this slide because what it means is she's talking to all of us. You guys, all you out there, have the power to help people from getting sick, okay? And you can do it through water and sanitation, groundwater sanitation. It's the way to go. And I was just knocked out when she said that. So I want to thank you. These are all the URLs. Just notice the top one because that's where all this information is. I also want to do one thing that I've started doing the past few years. I want to thank my wife, Mary Frances. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary, and she's been absolutely amazing because I couldn't do any of this stuff without her love, encouragement, and support, and she's a real godsend. And I also want to thank NGWA because a lot of what I've learned about doing this kind of work has been in halls just like this. People like Stuart Smith, Steve Schneider, Dave Kramer, and a bunch of you other folks. So God bless you. And if you want to contact me, my email's down there, aquedoc@Oregon State, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. So again, thanks very much. I want to thank NGWA for having me, and have a great rest of the conference.
Well, you mentioned where's the check. Actually, we were honored, our foundation, which does do developing nations projects, one of our pledgers gave us a $20,000 check this morning. It's very awesome, very awesome.